The African Union is set to become a permanent member of G20, which would give the continental body of 55 African states the same status as the European Union. But you have to ask yourself, why now? Look, with the expansion of BRICS, it has finally dawned on the colonial West that Africans have an alternative to the classic Western-led world order, and they are desperate to rein Africans back into the neo-colonial power sphere. For what feels like eternity, Africans weren't treated like equal partners, and instead any relationship was built on the foundation of subjugation and control. But with the facade of Western dominance cracking and new alliances forming, Africa's might can no longer be undermined. It's finally time for the world's most important continent to step up to the plate and redefine its destiny. It's easy to be fooled by Western promises of seemingly altruistic equality and partnership, especially after getting a seat at the table, isn't it? But never forget what they did to you and milk this cow for what it's worth. But ultimately, I want to know your opinion. Will joining the G20 benefit Africa? Let me know in the comments.
We are more or less pushed out many Western countries, including US, from Niger, from Mali, from Burkina Faso, from other countries. And this will cause problems for the future if we don't act. So we are thinking about an integrated approach to step up our efforts in Africa. And especially this approach will be that we will support them in a way that they ask for, instead of bringing them good, like we did in the past. So we're working hard on that one. But the reality at the moment is we lost ground. We saw there are more and more actors active in Africa. And I mentioned already migration, but it also means that when we are not present there, that it will be more difficult to have access to raw materials.
The U.S. doesn't like all this sovereignty and making its own decisions that Africa is up to. So the United States now has decided to put some pressure on Africa to basically sanction itself against buying any goods or anything else from Russia other than grain and fertilizer. Grain and fertilizer, okay, fine.
Here's the New York Times headline.
Yes, so now the New York Times is reporting that U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Linda Thomas-Greenfield, is warning African countries not to purchase anything from Russia besides grain and fertilizer, or else what? Or else what? You know what? Sanctions.
Because we love our sanctions.
Our favorite things, right? So you sanction them, or we're going to sanction you, right? Now, you may recall that just a few weeks ago, we reported that African nations, they had a conference lately. They published a paper, and they said, we need to tap into our own resources of fossil fuel for energy because we are too dependent on foreign imports and therefore too vulnerable to outside influences. This is prime example of that kind of thing, right? So the rest of the world said, no, Africa, you're going the wrong way. Don't use fossil fuels. You'll screw up the environment. Like, it's fine for us to have done that, but you don't start, right? Don't go and use your own oil. Unless we want it, then give it to us, right? But no, we cannot have African nations making sovereign decisions. We need to reserve the right to tell you what to do.
So here's what U.S. Ambassador Linda Greenfield said when, and we'll go through what she was planning here with this New York Times. In this New York Times piece, it lays it out pretty well. She says, during a visit to Uganda, that countries could buy Russian agricultural products, including fertilizer and wheat. But she added that if a country decides to engage with Russia where there are sanctions, then they are breaking those sanctions. She says, we caution countries not to break those sanctions because then they stand the chance of having actions taken against them. I mean, the audacity.
That's a not so veiled threat.
Like, you bullies, right? She says that purchasing Russian oil risks sanctions. So if you need fuel, you can't buy it from Russia because you run on fuel in Africa. You run on diesel fuel. You need diesel generators. You know, how else are you going to live, right? If you need it, sorry, that's a violation, and we will come after you. The United States, already to a horribly poverty-stricken, famine-stricken part of the world that gets hit the hardest when we put these sanctions in place, is going to bully them. She goes on to say, even though many of U.S. European allies are still buying Russian crude before a ban takes effect by the end of the year, many African nations, including Uganda, have not joined the U.S. in condemning Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Oh, maybe they're independent and they can make their own decisions, like Serbia.
Maybe
right?
they don't want in on your fight.
Maybe like Serbia, which made a natural gas deal, and and now Russia is building a military base in Serbia. They've made their point. They know what they want. They know where their allies are. They remember NATO bombing. They remember their country being destroyed. And many African nations have a long memory of U.S. colonialism, U.S. military intervention. And they rightly blame Western sanctions as well as war for raising food prices and exacerbating shortages in Uganda. Just specifically Uganda, we're using it as an example here. She was asked by reporters to clarify this position. I like this because I pulled up the transcript of her speech. And the question was, are you planning to say what you just told me, the reporter, to the leaders of those countries and those representatives who you are meeting with? And Ambassador Thomas Greenfield says, I'm going to be, she basically says it's going to be a listening tour. She says, I'm going to be listening to them. This for me is a listening tour. It's how, I want to hear how they want to deal with addressing the issues related to food insecurity and finding solutions. So I'm not going about some blame game. What I am about is finding a way forward so that we can address the food insecurity needs that people are feeling every single day. People are starving. People are suffering. How can I and the United States government use our positions to help Africa? How can we address these needs? As you know, Administrator Power was in the region last week discussing food insecurity with African leaders in the Horn of Africa. Secretary Blinken will be on the continent next week, and all of this is a lead up to what we'll be doing during a high-level week in New York in September and the African Leaders Summit in December, and the president will be hosting it. Oh, I can't wait for that in December, to see the president of the United States hosting the Africa Summit so we can tell them more what they can do with themselves.
Sure. Also,
is Toto going to be there?
Then I would go.
I mean, okay, you're here to listen, but also you have an agenda of what you don't want them to do. Also, like, I don't know, you're traveling on U.S. taxpayer dollars. Maybe you should just listen on the phone then instead of doing all this threatening.
Yeah, but also to listen to food insecurity, like how is it for you guys to be so food insecure in a region that we've raped for so many years? Like what is that like? Like we literally come into your country and steal your resources. What is that like? Can you tell me?
Yeah. Oh, Ethiopia, you're hurting. Sorry.
I just, like you're on a date for the first time. Like, I'm really interested in you, Africa. Can you just died in your eyes?
I just hope they use the like baby voice, like, oh, like, oh no, tell me about your food insecurities. Like,
Right.
come on, this is like pandering. This like pisses me off.
Yeah.
Like this.
Go ahead.
It's so pandering. It just pisses me off.
Yeah.
Yeah. We want to know about your food insecurity and we want to find solutions for it.
But we're also going to tell you what you can't do to solve it.
Here's an idea for finding solutions. How about we stop stealing your resources? How about we stop placing undue debt burdens on your countries, right? So that you can never claw your way out of poverty because of the International Monetary Fund and the amount of debt that you take on at the behest of the Western colonial powers and imperial powers that rape your countryside on a regular basis. How about that? Yeah, but we'll invite you to Washington for a little Africa Summit so we can tell you more about how.
Yeah, welcome brothers and sisters from Africa and across the world. You know what? I'm so happy today because it is so interesting. It is so interesting from that conversation. And I like those presenters because they were speaking something which is so great because these are Americans. These are the white people. But the way they're presenting this issue is something that they're also being pained about on how America is using other people, on how America is controlling the world because of their superior, because they feel like they're so superpower, they are so superior, so they have the right to control or to make a decision whenever they want, without believing or realizing that they're the people today who need much help from other countries. When we as Africans decide to do something, we are being told that we are going against the will, against the laws, against the agreements. So they always come out to say on how they are going to sanction African countries, how they are going to sanction African countries. So what is sanction? Because the country of South Africa was sanctioned many years ago, but still today, when you go to South Africa, it's doing great. It's doing great than how it was being controlled by America. because at this time, America and South Africa, they're still in quarrel, they're still in war because South Africa is trying to pull out itself from the control of America. That's why you see today South Africa is not being concerned about the UN and all these other bodies, but they are only focused to relationship with the BRICS. So these are problem. That's why you see America is trying so hard to make sure that they capture South Africa so that they keep on controlling South Africa because they benefit from South Africa so long. Zimbabwe was sanctioned for 20 years, but today Zimbabwe is doing great. So this means that when we keep on bowing before America, when we keep on focusing and being submissive to all that they are coming to tell us, then we are the one who are going to suffer. We are the one who are going to fall because we cannot grow. We cannot develop from we are still being controlled by America and Europe because they all know that when they control us, they have the ability and they are able to get all that they want from Africa. Once they control us, they put more restriction, they keep the more policies in Africa. So we find ourselves of not doing the great things that can build up our continent, cannot build our countries, cannot give us the life that we need, but we keep on believing and depending on America, on Europe, so that we, whenever they decide not to help us, then we will suffer, we'll die because they have refused to help Africans.
America's manipulation of Africa is rapidly coming to an end. And here's what happened. 15 countries and soon all 54 nations will be using the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System, PAPS, to trade in local currency. This means they are not using the dollar. And this means the US loses out on about $200 billion in trade. But more importantly, loses power over these nations. It's finances and culture that are driving these nations to eliminate the dollar and not Trump. Financially, PAPS reduces trade costs from about 30% to 1%.
Now, today, Americans themselves, the white people today are coming to admit themselves that they have lost control. They have no longer have that power to control Africa because this is the time for the African continent. This is the time of the Africans to awaken, to rule and to stand by themselves. That's why you are watching things that are happening. As we saw the other day, Europe and France France or entire Europe was chased out of Africa, and Africans, for those countries that was being colonized by Africans, by Europe or France, they came to resist, they came to rise up, they came to awaken, and they get to the point where they said that no, we are not going to associate anything with you. In Africa, whenever you come out with anything which we feel that's good, they must find a reason to limit us not to do anything that can awaken and strong. They keep telling Africa about the green energy, which they are not using. They tell Africans not to trade with Russia because if we trade or associate with Russia, they are going to sanction us. So what? Because at this time, let me give an example. Today I give an example what if a Congo sanction America? What will happen? It means that America will not be able to do anything. America will not be able to maintain their nuclear weapons. America will not be able to come up with the building of these gadgets. America will not be able to control their own economy because everything that they are doing today, they are doing all this because they're getting resources, they're getting raw materials, they're getting richness from the Congo. While the Congolese themselves are suffering, dying due to hunger, dying as refugees in other people's countries, when their richness, their resources from their own country, from their own soil, is being used by other people who are America, France, Britain, China, Russia, all these great countries. But today, Africa the West has lost control, has lost power over Africa, while other people like China, people from East, China, Russia, are taking much control, not control, but influence in Africa because China don't come to Africa to loot, to steal. or to manipulate or brainwash Africa. They come to do a business whereby you have to agree. We focus on agreements. You are getting this and we are giving you this. We are building you as this kind of infrastructures. Then in return, you are going to give us something. So this is the business that we want at this time, but not a business of being dictated, being killed just for our own resources. The Americans were only trained to come and take whatever they want. They are ready to kill, but they make sure that, to make sure that they get what they want. So this is the kind of the life that Africans are resisting. This is the kind of life that Africans are not ready to associate or to associate with, because this is the time that Africans have come to realize and awaken and know that all the way that the West have been using us, we can no longer continue living this way. We can no longer being used and being oppressed while we are the one supplying the world with everything that they need. We can no longer continue living this kind of life when we are the ones sitting on the top of every resource that the world needs for it to grow, for it to develop, for it to build. So, my people, this is the time, during the time of all these great inventors, all these great Pan-Africans who were assassinated, who were killed, people like Patrice Lumumba, Kwame Nkrumah, all that they were doing is to make sure that they awaken Africa. They tell Africans the truth about what they are having in their life. But because the whites could have not allowed the black people to awaken others who are still in a sleep, who are not already discover themselves or realize themselves who they are and what do they have, they would have not let these people to live. That's why they terminated their life. But today we are watching. We are seeing other African leaders who are standing bold and tell the whites that we are no longer going to associate or to entertain you. This is Africa. We are the one to control everything that is in Africa. We are the one to control who to trade with, who to give out our resources. But not you coming here in Africa and you tell Africans that you don't have to trade with Russia. You don't have to trade with China. You don't have to use something. They tell us even not to use some of African resources. It is bad, but they are coming to take it. They are coming to take what they're telling us that it's bad. We don't have to use it. So this is not the generation of being brainwashed. This is not the generation of Africans being told what to do, who to trade with, who to associate with. We're today fighting on how to unite Africa, how to rebuild African continent, how to recover all that was stolen, how to dismantle all these borders which were created by some individuals. They never created this border to develop us, to help us, but they created these borders to keep ourselves from each other so that they can get the space to penetrate and access to our own richness.
These borders, and I also mentioned to my brother, these borders that you create silos for yourselves amongst, you must always remember, are not your creation. These were creations of people outside of this continent who made these borders not to develop you, but to extract from you. Now that you want to develop yourself, we must start looking at these borders and we must start removing the barriers that we have put, that have defined us in the past, and now hinder us from being the giant that we should be.
They played a mind game and they fooled the Africans. And up to this time, there are some Africans who are still believing in these things, the artificial things that were created by Europeans. So, because Africa, all that is having is something that the world never have, no any other continent is having. That's why you see Africa has turned into a battlefield. But when we as Africans, we fight for the best governance, for the best leadership, for the best, then we are going to unite. We are going to get the best we need. We are going to get the best treatment from other amongst ourselves. We are going to protect our own richness, our resources. We are going to build our African countries with all that we are having in our own countries. We are going to control the world because we are having all that the world needs to control other people. Today, China is fighting with America because of Africa. America is fighting with Russia because of Africa. Because all that they are fighting for is here in Africa. We are sitting on top of it, and they are there, coming still to tell Africans that we need to bow before them. This is not the time. So this is a clear picture that today the prophecy is coming to pass, to fulfill. All they did to Africa during the slavery time, during the colonization, all the genocides, everything, all the massacres they did towards Africans, the innocent souls of Africans who were standing tall to fight for their own properties, to fight for their own freedom. This is the time that they are getting to paid, because this is the time Africans have awakened, and they don't know, they don't want to play around with what they are having in their life. So it is true that today America has come to prove that they are losing. This has been confirmed by professors, the white professors, and other lawmakers from America. They have come to prove to the world that they can no longer stop Africa from developing, from uniting, because Africa is rising, Africa is strong, and African youths are there to monitor everything that is happening across Africa and across the world. So this is our time as the black people to stand tall and make sure that whatever comes in our way, which is not of building Africa but for destroying, we are not going to allow this to happen, because this is our time and not any other time that we will have. We are not going to allow this to happen. We are not going to allow all that happened during the times of our ancestors to happen, because they were taken advantage of. They were convinced, they were brainwashed, which brought all this problem that we are having today in Africa. We are not going to allow that. This is Africa's new era, and nobody, and I mean no one, can stop this. Tell me what you have in the comment section. Join my membership. Kindly subscribe, leave a comment if you are new here. And don't forget to come back, because we are here to speak more concerning our motherland, Africa, because we are here to push the agenda of African unity, African freedom and independence, and abolish the border restrictions so that we can unite and make Africa one, under one currency, one leadership, and one army. And this is going to shake the world. The world have to pay attention to Africa, because a lot is coming. Be blessed, Regime from. I love and appreciate your support for being here always.